A Muslim teen in Pennsylvania dismantled a popularly held stereotype about women who used the hijab, and she did so with a text to her dad in Saudi Arabia. Now this is a picture of Lamyaa, who is 17 years old, and so she was in this group chat, okay, and they were talking about politics, and Trump came up, and she obviously, as a young Muslim woman in America, decided to kind of stand up for herself. She has some pretty strong views about Trump, so she stood up for herself, and somebody in the group chat responded something pretty harsh. She goes, "Stop defending Islam, bitch. Shut up. You couldn't take that scarf off or your dad would beat your ass." So she was very offended by this and decided to actually prove him wrong by texting her dad and not telling him any of sort of the context around this. So she texted her dad, "Baba, I want to tell you something." He says, "Talk to me." And then in Arabic, he says, "Are you okay, my love?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm okay. I was thinking I want to take my hijab off," okay? Then he responds, "Sweetheart, that's not my decision to make. That's no man's decision to make. If it's what you feel like you want to do, go ahead. I'll support you no matter what. Is everything okay? Did something happen?" So she posted this next to the tweet from the person in her group chat to sort of prove that it's not always an act of oppression and that women are being forced to do so by fathers or husbands or whatever. And she got over 142,000 retweets for this text experiment that she did. A lot of people supporting her for showing this. A lot of people who also came out and talked about what their hijab means to them. Of course, she also faced some backlash for women that said just because you're not oppressed doesn't mean that there are other women that aren't oppressed. And so I do think that this sort of is a nice example of two sides of the argument around the hijab and around some of the rules of Islam religion.
Yeah, so I don't like the hijab at all. So that's my personal opinion, and it's not necessary according to the Quran. So I've read the relevant sections of the Quran regarding that. It doesn't say you have to cover your head, especially if you're a woman, but not if you're a man. It just doesn't say that. But it is a cultural thing that has developed, and I think it is to keep women down. And so I know that some women have internalized it and think that they're doing it because of religious reasons, cultural reasons, but in respect of their culture. I've said this 1,000 times. There are great parts of culture that should be revered. I'm a nostalgic guy. There's a lot of American culture that I love. Some parts of Turkish culture where my family is originally from, but there's a lot of terrible parts of culture. And so we shouldn't be wed to it just because it exists. And so at the same time, I think making people take the hijab off is almost as bad as making them wear it, because you're still taking away their freedom and their liberty, and that's not the values of the culture that I agree with. No. Coming from a Western perspective, I think freedom says they should be allowed to do whatever you want. That doesn't mean that I can't try to dissuade them from it and we have a conversation around it. So I like that she broke down stereotypes by saying, hey, it's my choice, and you don't know what my family situation is, you don't know what my religion is. But I also think that it was interesting pushback when people said, well, in your case it's a choice, but for a lot of women across the world it isn't. So, good points.
Yeah, the text message itself breaks down stereotypes. Many people assume that her father would have been in outrage at this and would have told her, you're going to burn in hell for showing you, for not standing by what is to believe in, questioning what your decision is. Because you mentioned it there, whether you have your opinions towards what this culture represents and what these women should choose to do, is that you have your opinion, but you're not forcing it upon them. Like many Westerners feel that it's their right to try and liberate Muslim women by being like, okay, you're free now, you're in the United States, you can take that off. And that's like you're almost enforcing a very similar thing that conservative Muslims on their side are forcing towards them, because they're stating, no, you need to cover up. This is everything that you stand for. You don't have a choice. This is what you're doing. So it took me back to an article that was written in Fusion not long ago, where a woman was basically stated in the headline, Westerners and conservative Muslims, stop telling me what to wear. And that's the whole message to put across, is that there's going to be 1,000 different opinions, but we are so naive when it comes to education surrounding the religion of Islam. We know that. Like, that's why it's so easy to push forward these misconceptions, and Donald Trump can gather everyone behind him and have this mountainous attack towards a certain group of people, because we're so uneducated on it and we don't understand, so we just kind of flock to whatever one person says. So more stories like this are so important because we need to educate ourselves further. Whether you believe something and you have your own opinion, as you said, Cenk, it's still not our place to try and like push our Western ideology onto people.
Yeah, Francis, I think you make a really good point, right? Because it is difficult to parse out, right? Because in some cultures, it is forced upon women, right? But when we look at more secular cultures, women who still choose to wear the hijab or not, for a lot of women, there was a hashtag that said #hijab to me, and a lot of women wrote about how it was a source of femininity for them, or it made them feel more bold and strong in their choice to do it. So it can mean different things to different people. And I think that's really the core of this, right? Is that we assume that Islam is somehow different than a lot of religions. And I think when we talk about it, it's different than a lot of religions. But just like any religion, it's not monolithic in its manifestation. And I think that's what we need to remember, is that for some women, the hijab might be a sign of or oppression, but for some women, it might be a source of liberation. We need to accept both manifestations of women who decide or don't decide to wear it.
Yeah, you're right about a lot of different religions have different rules. So for example, a friend of mine is on the New Jersey coast. He's really early in the morning. He happened to get up early and he goes into the ocean, and notice there's a conservative, I guess Orthodox, I don't know the specific strand of Jewish family that's there, right? And he noticed after a while there's a pattern. Every time he goes in the ocean, they come out of the ocean. He goes into the ocean, they come out of the ocean, right? He comes out of the ocean, they go back into the ocean. He's like, what the hell's going on, right? And it turns out that for that particular sect of Judaism, they couldn't have the women in the water at the same time as him. Okay, to me that's super goofy. It's an ocean. Right? There's probably guys in the ocean down in Miami at the same time as you're in there in New Jersey. But that's like their opinion, man. And it doesn't mean every Jew does it that way. It doesn't mean every Muslim wears a hijab or a burqa, and that there is a distinction between those two things. So there's a dejab movement apparently of people getting rid of their hijab. As a person, again, who's very secular, I love it. I think that the hijab is basically propaganda and an old school culture that we don't need and that I don't think helps women. But on the other hand, the people trying to take it off, can you imagine if you went up to whether it's those conservative Jews in New Jersey or it's conservative Muslims in France where they're trying to get them to take their hijabs off on the beach or whatever, right? And you say, okay, not only do you have to take off one article of clothing above your head, you also have to take off your top. Let me see I want to see you topless. You'd be like, what?
Right.
Like, that's unbelievable. Of course you can't do that, right?
Yeah.
But why is it that much different? No, it's their choice what they get to wear. I mean, if you're secular, that should be the core of your beliefs.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think if you are progressive and you want people to have freedom to choose or whatever, then they can choose to be really religious or they can choose to be really secular. The whole point is about having that choice and having the ability to make that choice.
Our journalism drive is almost over. It ends in Trump's first 100 days. We need to hire more reporters and more watchdogs. Let's do that right now at tytnetwork.com/go.